I'm going to go ahead and get us started. Welcome to everyone attending. This is the First Step post-film discussion where we are looking at myths that are associated with the criminal justice system and the experience of individuals with lived experience. And so I just want to take this time to welcome you to this forum, as well as to welcome you to TE, which is Towards Employment. I'll start off by telling you a little bit about Towards Employment. Towards Employment is a nonprofit located in Cleveland, Ohio. And our mission is to empower people to achieve self-sufficiency through employment. And every day, our employees work with participants to meet them where they're at, provide supportive services, and build longstanding relationships so that we're not just finding a job for them, but we're walking alongside of them as they find a job, advance into a career, and provide all the supports that may be needed along the way. In our programming, nearly half of the participants may have lived experience related to the criminal justice system. That's why films like this are so important to look at the policies that impact the criminal justice system and also the challenges that are associated with advancing policy for improvement of the criminal justice system by eliminating barriers and promoting equity within the system. So I'm going to turn it over to Lance Kramer. Lance is one of the producers for the film, and I'm going to let him share just an overview about the film for anyone that may not have had a chance to see it, and also share a bit about the behind the scenes parts of the film with the director and other things that happen.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you having us, and thanks for hosting this this discussion. And also, it was a real honor to be with you in Cleveland last week. Feels like ages ago, but it was last week to share the film. And I apologize too that my brother Brandon, who's the director of the film, unfortunately can't be on because he actually just got COVID, so he's still recuperating. But I wanted to kick off. My name's Lance Kramer. I'm in DC, and I'm the producer of the film. I wanted to kick off first, maybe by playing a clip. It's just a 90-second clip from the film, but I feel like it can speak better than I can in terms of what this film to me is really about. So why don't we start there, and then I'll just say a few words afterwards, if we can get the tech set up.
9% of the people we prosecute are truly actually guilty of the crime for which they're prosecuted. The purpose of sentencing is to punish, to deter, to incapacitate, and yes, to rehabilitate.
No, but it's so important. Listen, you spend most of your time, even up there, talking about punishing people and deterring people, incapacitating people. We can do a better job, and we should do a better job on rehabilitation.
If we pass this legislation, we'll be paying more and getting less than we currently have. How does that make sense?
I want you to meet Lewis.
My name is Lewis. Federal or state?
Federal.
Federal?
Yes.
Let me see your pre-sentence report. Let me see your pre-sentence report, then you and I can have a meaningful conversation, because so many people talk about their circumstances, and
you haven't even listened to them.
I know, but
you can't just throw somebody in a category and not listen. It's not fair.
You as a journalist need to see his pre-sentence report.
And you as a human being need to listen to a human being. Are you a father?
I am far much more than something that has been written about me. I'm a father, I'm a husband, I'm a son, I'm a licensed clinician in the state of Connecticut. I have a master's degree in clinical counseling. I have a bachelor's degree in psychology, and I also have a bachelor's degree in criminal justice, all of which I earned while I was incarcerated. Now, however...
Isn't that a terrific thing? In the federal system, you learned all those things?
However...
Is that right?
Yes, but here's the caveat. I did not earn those things by way of the institution subsidizing my education. I learned those things, and I had the great fortune of being educated and matriculating through university because I was subsidized by my family and friends, and I shouldn't be exceptionalized. I take these conversations back to the people who are on the inside, and I tell them that there are people who don't want you to come home.
Let's stay together. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
So that's just, you know, a moment in a 90-minute film, but I think it gives you, you know, a sense of what some of the people who were on the front lines fighting for this bill, which is called the First Step Act, were up against in terms of the headwinds to get criminal justice reform at the federal level passed. And you know, just to give a little bit of context to set up the conversation, when we made this film, we started working on it in late 2016, early 2017. It was a scary time, not like it's not any less scary now, but it was a very scary time at that moment. Divisions were on the rise in the country, fear was on the rise, and really the conversation was not about progress in a lot of respects. It was really about resistance and also just doing whatever we could to prevent a fall backwards on a lot of these issues. And as filmmakers and really just as people and as humans, Brandon, my brother, and I really just care. We care very deeply about people who are impacted by injustices in this country. And we also care a lot as people who grew up inside the Beltway about DC and the role that DC plays in the democracy and advancing justice when it's at its best. We also get really concerned about what it looks like when DC is not functioning at its best, and the consequences of that. So really at that time, we knew Van Jones, who's the central protagonist in the film, from having worked together on several projects prior. And we were friends with him and really saw at that time that he was one of the few people in the public eye who was making this calculation to engage with the new administration, at least on these issues where he saw some potential openings for common ground solutions together. And in particular, he identified criminal justice reform and the addiction crisis as two of those issues where, despite all the differences that he had with the new administration, there was a potential overlap and room to do something together. Obviously, there was a very controversial assessment that he made. His decision to engage was a perilous decision, where we knew that his journey to engage would be a perilous one. But we felt that no matter what the outcome of trying to get something done on criminal justice reform and the addiction crisis during that time with that administration, it would be an important story to tell, and to tell it in an honest way. And that if we could tell that story about attempting to win freedom for people at such a divisive and scary time, that people could learn from the attempt, and really that hopefully the story about the journey could spark more conversation and more action and hopefully more change. And that's really why we're here today, is to have that conversation.
Thanks, Lance, for that overview. And for those you attending, Lance is also on the panel, so he's doing double duty as describing the film, but he's also one of the participants on the panel. I want to transition at this point to introducing all of our panelists and giving them a chance to share their truth and their story with you. And I'm going to kick things off with Noreen. If you could introduce yourself.
Good morning. My name is Noreen Mcclendon, and I'm the Executive Director of Concerned Citizens of South Central Los Angeles. And I was a participant in the documentary. My family, I'm actually from Philadelphia, although I live in South Central. But my mother was the first executive director of the organization, and she always hired formerly incarcerated people. I felt like the week before she passed away, we had a contract with the city of LA to teach pothole repair and alley cleanup, and we had 15 formerly incarcerated folks picked up permanently by the city. And I felt like that and us purchasing a senior building that was in distress were two things. And she said, okay, I can go now. because she passed that Saturday. But it was important to her. And then my brother, who's also deceased, was the late Reverend Eugene Williams III, and he was involved in reentry starting in 1988. They didn't even have a term for it in 1988, but he started back in Philadelphia, then he went to Georgia, and then he was all over the country working, and he formed organizations. But so my family has been involved in reentry for a very long time. And my portion of the film centered mostly around being one of the 5 people that met the 5 people from West Virginia to discuss the differences that we had. But the thing that I like to focus on are the things that we had in common. One of the things that I know to be a fact is that addiction is addiction, no matter where you are, no matter how wealthy, no matter how poor. And suffering is suffering, no matter what part of the country you live in. And so it was important to me to be a part of the film. And I'm very proud of having been a part of the film. But there are 2 things. One that I want to say off the top, and that is related to the organization's work. I don't want people to be, and I teach in prison as well. I teach in the women's prison, and well, at least before the pandemic, haven't been allowed back in yet, but I've been teaching in the prison since 2013, and I've taught in female prisons as well as male prisons. And I don't want people to be afraid to take the skills that they've learned and become entrepreneurs as well. You're not limited to going to work for someone else. Quick story, and then I'll shut up. I had a 68-year-old, and she called herself white woman. And what she said to me, she said, Noreen, you guys come in here all the time and you talk about, getting a job and people being willing to hire you and, how you can prepare yourself. She said, I'm a 68-year-old white woman with a felony. Nobody's going to hire me. And I said to her, I said, well, number one, you don't necessarily have to be employed by somebody, because she had a garden, and every time the prison had a visit, they literally took them to her garden. I said, you can sell flowers to Home Depot or any nursery, local nursery. And these are things you can do. But fast forward a few years and she's out. And not only did she get 1 job, she has 2 jobs and she does sell her flowers. But so I just wanted to say at 60, she came out at 71. Okay. And she has 2 jobs. So I just want everybody to realize, and she's a 71-year-old white woman with a felony, and she got 2 gigs. Don't play with me. Okay.
Thanks for sharing, Noreen. I appreciate that. Carla, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Hello, everyone. I'm Carla Hopkins. I am a career coach here at Towards Employment. This is very important to me because I have been through the criminal justice system as well. I see a lot of what our participants go through. I've lived it myself and I am still living it. So this is very important to me. And I work with reentry participants. So the things that they're going through, I have experienced as well, which I think makes a better bond for me to coach them. And that's it, and I'll pass. Thank you.
Thanks, Carla. Greg?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Greg Reese. I am also a career coach here at Towards Employment. I'm a former corrections officer who went to prison for 5 years. And I know exactly what it's like getting out after being away for years. I didn't know that Towards Employment existed back then. And the reentry programs that did exist weren't a lot of help. So as each day goes by, because you come out with this happy spirit, you're so joyful that you're finally free, but each day that you don't get employment or you don't have a support system, you just kind of start going downhill. people always say, go back to your old ways. Everybody wasn't a criminal when they went to prison. Some people made a mistake. So going back to your ways would have been a great thing for me because I was a working man. So I like to dispel that narrative too. But I saw this film and it drummed up so many different emotions for me. I applaud you all, the filmmakers, all those that participated, Mr. Jones. It was great, and I can't wait to get to talking about it.
Thanks, everyone. And I don't think I introduced myself. So I am Dr. LaShawn Sawyer. I'm the Director of Advocacy and Policy here at Towards Employment. Before we jump into myth busting, I wanted to just share our Towards Employment Policy Action Plan. We develop a policy plan over the course of the coming years, so 2022 through 2025. And we are working with 4 areas. And I won't go into all the areas in detail, but I will highlight them. Our first advocacy effort is to disrupt and address the root causes of racial disparity in the workforce. Our second item is to provide on-ramps or training opportunities and funding support for individuals to find employment. The third one, which I think really resonates with this film, is removing the barriers associated with the criminal justice system and lifting up those that have lived experiences and promoting equality. And so this film really ties to that policy advocacy effort. And our final action that we are working towards is addressing the social determinants of work. And so that's not just talking about clocking in and clocking out at work, but all the things that you need to be successful and for your mind to be at peace while you're at work. So if that's having access to daycare, transportation that's reliable and consistent, having a support network, having the ability to take care of your home. When all the things outside of work are in place, your mind is in a better place to be a productive employee. And so it's really important that we look at not only getting the job, but all the other supports that should be in place for someone to stay on the job and advance in their career. So I just wanted to take some time to share why we are so passionate about lifting up films like this. It's part of our mission, it's part of our advocacy efforts, and it's part of us educating the public that everyone with lived experience is deserving of a second chance and that we provide those supports. So let's jump into some myth busting. One of the current myths that is popular, unfortunately, right now, is that individuals returning home should just be happy with any job. Any job is a good job. And I want to open that up to our panelists. What are your thoughts about, we're not going to spend a lot of time on debunking the myth. I think we're in agreement that the myth is not true. But I really want to use this time to highlight how can we let people know that when they say things like this, or we hear comments that just take any old job, what would you want people to know about having a quality job, having a job that brings pride, and having a job that allows you to do what you want to do and truly live in the freedom that we're talking about? Anyone want to kick things off?
I would like to, if you don't mind. First of all, I think you have to change the face, because you look at people as just criminals or felons or whatever. You put them in this little box, not realizing that's a human being of whatever age. They could have children, or I was 38 when I came home, and I had a 12 and a 9-year-old. I needed to come out and be a father again. That was important to me. I mean, yeah, I took any old job because I wanted to get to work, but I didn't have any other options at that time. But I would have rather had come home to a better job. I know how my family struggled through those years that I was gone. So I wanted to, you can't turn back the hands of time or anything like that, but I want to contribute in a major way as quickly as possible. And it's not like I didn't have the knowledge or skills. I shouldn't have had to start over from the bottom, washing dishes when I had been a cook, so to speak. So I think it's very important. And plus, I know I could be an asset to any company I worked for. At that time, I was only able to get jobs through nonprofit. And this is my 21st year in nonprofit. So it was actually where I was supposed to go. And I'm happy where I'm at. But back to the take any job. No, I don't think you should ever have to settle for in whatever situation you're in. Even at your current job, you know you could do better. You should strive to get promoted. Don't take away from yourself, and don't let anybody else do that either.
I'm going to chime in and say, so Concerned Citizens provides affordable housing. And we've developed over 700 units of housing through the years. And so I have housed formerly incarcerated people. And I've had a few of them. And there is the concept with them. And one lady said to me, she had a friend who referred her call me and say, there's some things in the apartment that just aren't right. And I've asked the maintenance people and they're not fixed. And so the friend told her, well, I'm sure Noreen doesn't know. Have you called her? Have you told her? And she said, oh, no. I don't want to, I'm just glad to have a place. I just want to. So when we're on the phone and I said to her, I said, let me say this to you. I said, I understand you're glad to be home, but you need to report anything that is not correct and not done in that apartment. Why? Because come the first of the month, I want my money. Okay. And you paying the same rent that anybody else is paying. I'm not giving you no slack on your money, on your rent. So you don't have to take no slack about nothing else. This is the reality, is that your skills are valuable. What I really want people to know is the power of what you think about yourself is more powerful than any detriment they can put or obstacle they can put in front of you. So if you go in with your head down and you go into a job, oh, I'm just glad to be here, and then that's what you're going to get. If you go into looking for employment in that way, not that you're not going to face obstacles. Let's be real, they're there, but there's a mentality that comes with that. I'm just glad to be free. And what I say is, you earned your freedom. They didn't give you your freedom. If you look at the clip that was played earlier, the notion was not that we should, people should ever overcome their crime. Is punished, deterred, So nobody gave you your freedom. You earned it. You paid your debt to society. You paid what they said you owed. You're worthy. Keep it pushing. Hold your head up. If you invest, then you should get what everybody else gets. And one other thing, it doesn't matter whether you've ever been to prison or not. Nobody should be forced just to take any old job. In West Virginia, we were in the drug court, and they were praising people, listen to this, for getting a job at Subway. Not because it was the greatest thing, but those are the only jobs available that were available in the area. So the system as a whole doesn't provide, opportunity. There aren't very many. So you gotta go for what you know. You cannot go in with your head down and your spirit deterred, saying that I'm not worthy and I just need to take whatever they give me.
Any other comments?
Carla, do you have anything?
Yes, thank you. I feel as though, like Noreen stated, that when someone is released, they've paid their debt to society, and that society should look more into people that's paid their debts and give them the opportunity to work a job that they feel good about themselves in. It's so important for that person to get a job, feel that they're important, feel as though they're doing something that they want to do, so that they don't feel as though they have to turn back to their old ways and go back to jail. Um, I just think that society really needs to take a look at that because, um, like the man said on the film, they have been rehabilitated, um, and they have learned their lessons. So let them come out, let them work. And they may be the best workers that you can get. I mean, look at society now. There's people everywhere is looking for workers, but because they have a record, they can't get these jobs. And they may be turn out to be their best workers. So I'm just saying that people need to give them a chance. I mean, when I came out, I had to work a job. Um, and I'm a dependable, reliable person. I want to get to work. I want to work. I don't call off unless it's imperative that I do. And I had to work a job where, it was just disrespect. It was, no one wanted to work. They put all the work on you until I came here. And I feel as though now being here at Towards Employment with their missions of having people get a job to be self-sufficient, not be borderline poverty, but be self-sufficient. They shouldn't have to live in poverty-stricken areas, or they should not have to go back to the areas that had when they committed the crime. So I'm all for it. Just give people a second chance, and you don't know what may happen. You don't know what they'll be able to do. You don't know what they'll be able to accomplish. Thank you.
I'll just add something briefly, which is, I have not I've never served time in the system myself. I've been into prisons, and I certainly have a lot of friends and have worked with people who have been directly impacted. But as someone who hasn't served time, I can say that, I myself at some points was even guilty of, having this, believing the same myth that, oh, people should just be so lucky to, be out and have a job. I certainly don't feel that way now, but I have thought that way in the past. And I feel, and I certainly hear it from other people who are on the outside, who have not had any sort of direct contact with people who have been directly impacted. And I just always, what I try to remind myself, and I certainly try to, remind others, is that the oppressions of the system are so intense to begin with, throughout the entire, before and during someone's experience being directly impacted. And then after, if someone is coming home and then the system is still standing in the way of someone having ambition or hope, that's, to me, just the greatest tragedy and travesty that I can think of, is that after someone has already been impacted and has served time, that then they have no chance to even hope and have ambition, just like any of us. Because, as Greg said, we're all just people. That just feels like that's the greatest, robbery and travesty that could come from this, devastating system. So I try to remind people that, we're all people, and that, that's just such a basic thing in any country, but especially in America, to have hope and ambition, to want to do right for yourself and for your family. And I think that's an important thing for all of us to just continue to remind each other. And then through that, the ambition that comes from people who have been directly impacted can lead to incredible performance in work or starting jobs or any number of different enterprises or impactful outcomes.
I want to make one more comment about this myth of any job is a good job. Everyone knows if you hate your job, you're not going to do a good job. You're going in there with the wrong mindset the moment you get out of your bed. So how is that a good job for you? Now it could be for the next person. They may love to do what you're doing, but you want to go into work. I mean, unless you got your own business, you're going to be totally happy, but you could be okay because you love what you do. I love what I do. I love working with people who have a background and showing them that there's more out there for them. But notion of any job is a good job, that doesn't apply to anybody, whether you got a criminal record or not. You want to be able to work at a place doing a job that you at least enjoy. And nobody want to just work for a paycheck. That's it.
Thank you, everyone. Well said. And it reminds me in the Declaration of Independence, it says, we are entitled to the pursuit of happiness. And living in the United States, you have to barter with currency. So the things that you need, the things that you want, you have to have income. It's the bartering system that we live by, and why not let everyone have the pursuit of happiness? Let's move on to, and for the audience, definitely use the Q&A section. If there's any questions that you might have for the panelists, we're gonna make sure that we lift them up. We're gonna try to squeeze in at least one more myth to debunk. And we've talked about this a little bit, but I want to dive a little bit deeper. Sometimes in the community, people believe that individuals with lived experience, that experience doesn't matter, whether it is connection to actually serving time in prison or jail, or having sanctions placed on you with probation and still remaining in the community. It's an experience. What can we say to people to debunk this myth that individuals with lived experience can't make a difference? Their voice doesn't matter.
Okay, I'll go. First of all, that's like saying that because somebody has a lived experience with the criminal justice system, they're no longer a person, which at some level is ultimately what people think. The reality is that the most effective education, encouragement, support, learning experience is peer-to-peer. People who have lived it and understand. There's nothing like having somebody that's walked in your shoes and understands what you've been through to help you through a process. But my point for saying that is this: if we think about the numbers of people that have been incarcerated in this country, or even involved with, like you say, probation, and you just totally dismiss them and you throw them all out of society, we just discard all of them. Just think about how many people that would be. Like, we can't even afford it. And Carla mentioned people looking for employees now. You know, one thing that the pandemic showed everybody is that when the rubber meets the road, what this economy is based on is those of us at the bottom. It's not based on those at the top. They don't do anything. They dictate a lot, but they're not doing anything. So the physical things that needed to be done just for basic survival. Can I get some groceries? Right? We need people to do that. You know, I think I always, and I've said this, I have a Free to Heal YouTube channel, because the ravages of incarceration are not just on the people who are incarcerated. Families are impacted. Communities are impacted. I know in South Central LA, when all the drug arrests and they took all these people out of the community, you strip them out the community, and therefore there's no leadership. They didn't strip out the ones at the bottom. They took the ones with the brains, and put them in incarceration so that they could use their skills, and their labor. That's another whole thing. But the reality is that we can't afford as a society to just write off that many people. And so, yeah, like we just can't, we got to put everybody has to be given a chance again. And like I said before, I don't think it's even about being given anything. I think it's about, you've already earned it. You already earned it. So for me, we can't afford to just write everybody off. We just can't.
I have to say that I don't wear prison uniform. I don't have a prison ID. There's nothing tattooed on my forehead. I make a difference in people's lives every day. They won't know unless I tell them. You can't tell me a person with a criminal background can't make a difference in it. Some of your family members have a criminal background and made a huge difference in your life. That's so, I don't want to say stupid, but that's like really crazy to think that. I mean, I think about Martin, Malcolm, Jesus, all criminal justice, okay, I ain't gonna go there. Anyway, the point is anybody at any time can make a difference in a person's life. When I worked for the homeless, I'm on a bus and this young lady was talking to herself, obvious mental health issues. And she kept yelling, pick that up. You see it. You keep stepping over it, pick that up. And I immediately in my mind thought about that's how people feel about homeless people. They just walk over them, pretend like they don't exist, walk past them. And I'm on my way to work at the shelter, and I had to think about, she made a difference in my life by yelling at. It made me think and have more compassion about what I did for a living. So my point is, it doesn't matter about a criminal background. Everybody can make a major difference in a person's life.
I totally agree with Greg that anyone can make a difference in someone's life. I had a participant that I was working with the other day and became homeless, and family has basically won't let him in because of past situations. But when I talked to him, I had to let him know either it's going to be the park bench, it's going to be the homeless shelter, or it's going to be the county jail. And I told him, we've come to the end of the day where you're going to have to go to that shelter. I told him, I said, you don't want to end up back in the county. So you're going to have to rise above this situation here, and you're going to have to go there. And I said, now you remember those little mats, how thin those mats are in the county? And he looked at me and I said, yes, I've been there. And I said, so I know. I said, I know how it is to sleep on those mats. And I told him, I said, you're going to rise above this. You're in training. You're going to be doing get a job after training. So you're going to rise above this. And when I told him where I had been, I think he had a different respect of me. And I told him, I said, I wasn't always here, but I'm here now. I said, and I'm going to assist you to rise above so that you can climb up the ladder. I said, that's what I'm here for. And so I think that I did make a difference because of lived experience in this man's life. And he was so appreciative. And he calls me to let me know his situation, and he says, I'm going to rise above this. Thank you.
I'll just say from the advocacy side too, something that, you know, I've seen now time and again, you know, throughout the process of making this film, and certainly in other capacities, has been the way that these efforts to reform the system have been led by people who have that lived experience, not just as like a single voice, but truly led, leading efforts to change the system. I've seen it play out at the federal level and bills like the First Step, and now there's a bill that, you know, looks, you know, apt to pass Congress called the Equal Act, which would permanently end the crack cocaine, powder cocaine disparity at the federal level, passed the House and is now in the Senate. It's being led by directly impacted people. And there's all sorts of state level advocacy that's going on that, you know, are really being led by people who were directly impacted. So these efforts, if you see that lived experience, which is obviously unfortunate, but nonetheless is a type of expertise that then can be applied to change these systems. Just like any other form of advocacy, experts are always brought in. Science or climate or you name it, there's always experts that are brought in. So I feel like when I've seen people who have been directly impacted look to that experience as expertise that then brings them to the table to lead these change efforts, it can lead to has led to quite profound outcomes. And something that Van says, and Lewis actually, who's in the clip that you all saw, says all the time, is that, you know, in their eyes, people who are closest to the problems are those who are closest to the solutions. And I certainly I believe that myself, and you know, I've seen that play out. But that said, just going to the question that was asked about, you know, how do you dispel these myths to people, say, who don't have that contact with people with lived experience and maybe don't have a chance to directly counter their myths. I also think it's important to get these narratives out to people who are far from the problems and maybe think that then they're far from the solutions because they feel like it doesn't impact them. And so I think that that's where, at least from our end, getting the stories out there, you know, into communities that feel like they're, you know, not touched, which is also a myth in and of itself, you know, has been important to us. So for example, with the film, we've taken this film to now 25 states, you know, red states, blue states, purple states, urban, rural, all sorts of places, not just in cities, not just in places that, you know, people think that incarceration is a problem, but truly everywhere, because the reality is that it's a problem everywhere and people are directly impacted everywhere. In my family too, just in the last 5 years, I've had 2 people, close family members, serve time. You know, and so it's just kind of, it's everywhere. And once you get people talking, I think that you find that it's much more pervasive and unfortunately unifying than maybe it seems on the surface.
You know, that makes me want to say this too. Everybody, that I think that's a big myth too, that there are people who don't come in contact with people who have been system involved. When I talked about the numbers of people, like really, all of those people touch somebody who touched somebody else, which is why it branches out into full communities and things. And so another thing I want to say is every state in the union has a prison. Red states, blue states, whatever. Every one of them got an institution. Okay, so that means everybody going to prison. Okay, everybody's getting locked up. Okay, now listen, you have people like me who did 12 hours in lockup and thought I was going to die. Okay, so I tell the inmates when I go into prison, listen, I want everybody to realize this. There's one difference between an incarcerated person and a person who's never been incarcerated. The person incarcerated got caught. Everybody else didn't. That is the only difference. If you run a red light, if you speed, if you drive while you tipsy, you're not claiming DUI, but you tipsy, you broke the law and you have a right to go to prison. I'm sure when you were a corrections officer, you never saw yourself being an inmate. I'm sure that did not occur to you, right? So let nobody get high and mighty and believe that they cannot be incarcerated. And I'm gonna let you speak, Greg, but if we are America as we claim to be, our former president should be incarcerated. You understand what I'm saying? And I say that only to say this, that there's nobody that can say that they haven't committed a crime or broken the law. Nobody. So yeah, everybody's touched.
I have to say this real quick. Actually, I did think that. And it's sad. Why? My very first day about to be a correction officer, me and my friend and coworker got pulled over by the police. And they had us all out, in front of everybody, broad daylight. Like, dude, this is my first day as a correction officer. It didn't matter. They went all through the car because he had a kind of fancy car. And they thought we were drug dealers. So I knew from day one, I said, one of these days I could easily change uniforms. And that's only because I'm a Black man. It had nothing to do with nothing else. I'd never been in any other trouble in my life, but I knew that. And then it just so happened, and I didn't think I was gonna commit the crime I committed, but that's a whole nother story. But yeah, it's sad to say I actually did think that, but I agree with everything you're saying. You're totally right. I mean, you could touch anybody. We got a mayor right now here in Ohio that's pleading guilty to taking money, campaign funds. So, you're exactly right. It happens.
I definitely appreciate all of the feedback that's shared. One of the things that I say often, there is only one place on this earth where people can't make contributions, and that's the cemetery. If you're not there, then you have the opportunity to do something. So when you get there, it changes a lot of your decisions. But if you're not there, there's always something that you can contribute. And we have to keep beating that drum to allow space for everyone to contribute in different ways. We all have different talents. We all have different strengths. We all have different weaknesses. So we don't have to be great at everything. You just have to be committed and connected to people that are great. And that's where the advocacy moves forward. I want to take some time before we wrap up to go to some of the questions and comments in the chat. Lance, this one is for you, and I'll read it as it appears. Since your belief in the myth of low expectations was countered by direct contact with others, what do you see as the best method to overcome that myth with people who will never encounter the reentry population?
Yeah, it's an excellent question. I mean, that's part of what I was speaking to before, was just this idea that, if these conversations stay limited to communities, even where there's the perception is that, they're closest to the problem, then I think we do run into the problem, this issue that was mentioned. So, I think from my vantage point, at least the way that I've tried to, advance the awareness has been by taking these narratives, into communities where people at least have that perception that they're not directly impacted. And then you kind of open up, and Noreen, you can speak to this, I think, from your experience in West Virginia, that as soon as you start talking, people actually say, oh, no, my son's been in prison, or my daughter's in drug court, or I lost a nephew to addiction, or this, that, and the other, that actually the circumstances may be different, but there's enough commonality that people realize that they've been impacted too, particularly in white communities, and particularly white, rural or conservative communities. That attitude, I think, is particularly pervasive. So I think a lot of it is just trying to find these ways of having the stories bridge those gaps. And then for those that can maybe move into those spaces, and I've felt, able to do that to a certain extent, then carrying that responsibility and as well. But I think that there's I'd be curious what others think about that too.
Well, I think, I said just a minute ago, I think it's a myth that there are people that don't know anybody that have been impacted, that have been system involved. I think that's the real myth. Because I just don't see it being anywhere. Criminals are everywhere. They're at every income level, so I think that is a bigger myth. And I think that we have to dispel the notion that you're going to live in society and not, particularly in America, where we really love our incarceration. The clip that was played, I mean, like, we're really into that as America. We want to punish, we want to deter, we want to, okay, look, let me just tell you this. Start with yourself, dude. Start with yourself. All that little $25 of campaign finance and the $50 meal let's start with you, dude. You see what I'm saying? You think you are entitled to break the law and not be challenged. So that's the myth I want to bust. Criminals are everywhere. They're at all levels. And so, we need to stop with the idea that somebody is not touched by criminal behavior or criminal consequences, because guess what? Even that gentleman, as lawmakers, your constituents are all affected. All of your communities are affected by the fact that people refuse to employ. Now you be happy to find those employees, because during the pandemic, everybody realized y'all not the be all end all or nothing know-how. You're not offering quality employment. You're not offering me employment in a situation where I can feed my family. I got to have 3 or 4 jobs and be away from them to be able to feed them. Then you call me a derelict parent when my child gets involved in criminal behavior because I'm not at home to supervise them. So you create the circumstance, then I fall into the trap that you set, and now you mad at me because I fell into the trap. The reality is that everybody, that is the myth to me, is that you're going to run it, somehow deal with people, but people need to realize that everybody in our society is touched by the amount of incarceration. Everybody. There's nobody that escapes, because those lawmakers now have to try to figure out ways to overcome all of the other ills that are the byproduct of our love of incarceration.
Well said. I want to acknowledge some of the comments and questions in the chat. There's several comments in the chat thanking all of you as panelists. I'm going to read these comments so that we acknowledge everyone's truth that's not on the screen. People should not be identified by their past, but what they do moving forward in life. So yes, Greg, anyone can make a difference in someone's life. More acknowledgements to comments that were made. And another comment that came in is, I know what it's like to be in the county and city jail and also in prison myself. Those mattresses are paper thin, and that's from experience. So another comment, people closest to the problem are usually closest to the solution. They acknowledge that they like that quote that was shared. There was a question about alternatives to incarceration. What would that look like? And we are at time, but I want to acknowledge all truth in this space. And so, Carla, if you could address that one. The question is, what are the alternatives to incarceration? What do you think that would look like? And then we can wrap things up after Carla's response.
I think the alternative to incarceration could be electronic monitoring, could be volunteer, community service. Thank you. Community service. I think those could be alternatives to imprisonment. It's just that in a society that we're in today, and with people of color, it seems like they get a different sentence than those of others. And it seemed like people with a lower socioeconomic status get a different sentence than people who have more resources, monetary resources. So I just think that, I guess what I'm trying to say is I think that people of color should get the same considerations as people of non-color. And I think that people with lower socioeconomic status should get the same sentences as people with a higher one.
Mhm. I appreciate that. I want to give each panelist a chance to have closing remarks. Start with Greg.
First of all, again, Lance and Noreen, great job. I love the film. It took me through a lot emotionally. I really felt for Mr. Jones, all that he went through and trying to get there. And I mean, to be losing your mother, obviously your marriage is suffering and your community turn their back on you all while you're trying to get this done. It's like amazing. Give him a lot of kudos. Myself, I definitely want to do more on my end. I want to, something Ms. McClendon mentioned earlier, I want to be able to help people coming out of incarceration to get their own businesses, show them how to do business plans, connect them with funding to get their business started. You got so many people that come out and want to be barbers and beauticians, and that's on the lower, I mean, that's, I ain't gonna say the lower end because they make a lot of money, but I'm saying that could be a simple thing to do. That training costs a lot of money. So that's something I want to do, my next step from this first step. I love helping people. I want to continue to do this as long as I can. And I'm very glad that I get paid to do where my passion is.
Noreen.
I just want to encourage everybody that to remember that people who are incarcerated don't go into prison and they don't do time alone. I am also a person who had a loved one, a man that I was dating, incarcerated. And the system itself is not designed, it's more designed, and I also teach in prison. So what I see is it's more designed to destroy versus just punish. It's not designed to rehabilitate. Even though the R has been put back, like in California, they had actually went the whole distance and took the rehabilitation off of it. And it was my brother before his passing that caused them to have to put that CDCR in the rehabilitation back in it, because they were telling the truth that they didn't care anything about rehabilitation. If you get rehabilitated while you're in prison, it's because you worked really, really hard. And Lewis mentioned it. So I just want people to realize that it is anybody can become incarcerated, and you don't have to be guilty to be sentenced to prison. We've seen stories of it. So I just want everybody to realize, don't ever think that you're above it and say what wouldn't happen, and then realize that everybody's valuable. Please do not come home from incarceration with your head down. You've paid your debt to society, and we need employees. We need employees, and we need people to do things in our society in order for us to continue to have the conveniences that we like, as well as the substance of what we need. So don't be afraid to be that substance to somebody else. Peer-to-peer education support is awesome. And Concerned Citizens has been successful by asking the community what they want and how we can best serve their needs versus telling them what we think they need. So yes, the people closest to the problem, they are the ones with the solution. So I just thank you and appreciate your work, Doc, because this is great stuff at the organization, and I just appreciate what you're doing.
Thank you. Carla, final words, and then Lance, final words, and how we can support the film.
Okay. I just want to say that at TE, with our mission, as far as helping people become self-sufficient through employment, is that we need to continuously fight the fight for our people coming in through reentry. We need to continue to fight the biases that they face. And like I stated before, we want them to come out and we want them to live a normal life like everyone else. We don't want them going back into poverty-stricken areas. They've paid their debt. We don't have to put them back into poverty. If they're making the money, let them go into the suburbs like they deserve to. They've done that. That's behind them. But when you put them back in those poverty-stricken areas, it's so much easier for them to get back into that way of life. So I just think that we all need to continue to fight for our people from reentry. Thank you.
Yeah, I thank you for the opportunity, Dr. Sawyer and everyone at Toward Employment to, convene this conversation and also just be so supportive of the film. For those who haven't seen the film, we'll just connect with you at Towards Employment and make sure that we can, figure out access so that people can see it. And it's just been very encouraging to me to be able to take this story to so many different places, some like Cleveland and some very, very different than Cleveland, and find the response is actually kind of similar in a sense, in the best possible way, no matter where we've been. So that gives me a lot of hope that there is something changing, and that people can also be moved on this issue. There's a lot of work to be done, which is why I hope that, for all of you, I really appreciate you being on this call. And I hope that there was maybe something that was said in the conversation that lit a spark or, lit a fire in you to get more involved or do something new or different. But change is possible. I've seen it happen with my own eyes, and I've been moved by what has been possible, even in seemingly impossible circumstances. So that gives me a lot of hope, and I just want to try to pass that hope on, to others too, that it is possible to continue making positive change.
Thank you. I want to, on behalf of Towards Employment, I want to extend thank yous to all of our panelists. This work keeps us busy. So you're here today and a plate is spinning somewhere that needs your attention. So we're very appreciative of you taking time out of your busy schedules to be here. And just want to acknowledge that we have an audience, but of a variety of people from the community, from Towards Employment, and from other connections that have seen the flyer for this film. But there's a group of participants in our workshop right now watching this discussion. I believe they're in day 2 of workshop. So shout out to the workshop. We see you. Thanks for coming. And continue to do the work. I've been doing some type of work with criminal justice for about 25 years, even though I will tell everyone that I'm only 21. But in terms of things to walk away with, you can help one person, you can advocate at the policy level, which is helping multiple people across system, whatever type of work you try to do, whatever type of advocacy you want to support, whether it's at the individual level or at the larger levels, it makes a difference. I've seen differences and change in my 25 years. I want to see more because I'm greedy like that, but change has been happening. We are not where we need to be, but it's because of all of those individual efforts represented on this panel and the people that just do it because they want to do it without acknowledgement to support reentry and continue to break down barriers. So I want to thank all of you. Thank you to the audience for participating today. And check out our website, towardsemployment.org, for more information about our services and programs. Thank you, everyone.